The Great Hall of Velith Prime was the most beautiful place in the known galaxy. Its walls were made of living crystal that sang soft music when the light touched them. The ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed inside. And the floor was polished stone that showed the reflection of everyone who walked upon it. For 3,000 years, the wisest teachers from every intelligent species had gathered here. They called themselves the Conclave of Mentors. They came to share their knowledge about the most important question any civilization could ask: how do we raise our children? The Tovani delegation sat in the place of honor. They had earned this position through conquest and strength. The Tovani were insects that walked like men, standing 7 feet tall with hard shells the color of dried blood. They had 4 arms, each ending in claws that could cut through steel. Their eyes were compound, made of thousands of tiny lenses that missed nothing. Their empire covered 40 star systems, and no species had ever defeated them in war. Ambassador Kethris was the leader of the Torvani delegation. He had lived for 200 years and had personally killed over 1,000 enemies in battle. His shell was covered with scars that he wore with pride. Each scar told a story of victory. He was considered wise among his people, which meant he was very good at killing and very good at teaching others to kill. Today, a new species would present to the Conclave. The humans had only discovered faster than light travel 50 years ago. They were soft creatures with no claws, no shells, no natural weapons at all. Their teeth were flat and useless. Their skin could be cut with a sharp leaf. They lived short lives, rarely more than 100 years. And yet, somehow, they had spread across the stars with remarkable speed. They had built colonies on harsh worlds. They had made alliances with species that trusted no one. They had solved problems that had confused older civilizations for centuries. Kethris wanted to know why the human delegation entered the Great Hall, and Kethris felt his mandibles click with surprise. He had expected warriors. He had expected soldiers in armor, or at least scientists with cold eyes and hard faces. Instead, he saw a small group of soft-looking people in simple clothes. Their leader was an old female with gray hair and lines on her face. She walked slowly, and her hands shook slightly. Among the Tovani, she would have been killed long ago for being weak. Her name was Dr. Elena Vasquez. She had been a teacher for 50 years before becoming an ambassador. Her eyes were brown and warm, like heated tree sap. When she smiled at the assembled delegates, the smile reached those eyes and made them crinkle at the corners. Kethris did not understand why looking at her made him feel strange. The formal greetings took a long time, as they always did. Each species had its own rituals. The Kethmari released calming spores. The Vornali sang a short song. The Tovani clashed their claws together in a show of strength. Dr. Vasquez simply bowed her head and said she was honored to be there. Finally, the time came for questions. Kethris rose to his full height. The crystals in the walls changed their song, becoming deeper and more serious. Everyone knew that when a Tovani spoke, it was wise to listen. "Human ambassador," he said, his voice like rocks grinding together. "Your species is new to the stars. You are weak in body. You have no natural armor, no venom, no claws worth mentioning. Your lives are short. By all logic, you should be prey, not predators." Dr. Vasquez listened calmly. She did not seem offended. "And yet," Kethris continued, "you have built an empire to rival species 10 times your age. You have made friends where others made enemies. Your soldiers fight with a fury that surprises even the Torvani, and your scientists solve puzzles that have no solution. We wish to understand this. We wish to study your methods." He leaned forward, his compound eyes reflecting the old woman's image 1,000 times. How do humans educate their young? The question seemed simple. Every species at the conclave had answered it. The Tovani trained their young in combat academies from the moment they hatched. The Kethmari used genetic modification and chemical conditioning. The Varnali taught through song and memory. Each method produced strong adults ready to serve their civilization, but Dr. Vasquez did not answer immediately. She was quiet for a long moment, and her eyes seemed to look at something far away. Some of the delegates grew impatient. The Tovani did not tolerate hesitation. "Forgive me," she finally said. "The question is simple, but the answer is not. Human education is difficult to explain with words alone." "Then do not use words alone," Kethris replied. "Show us. Surely you have recordings of your training facilities, your combat academies, your conditioning centers." Dr. Vasquez smiled, and again Kethris felt that strange feeling. It was almost like fear, but not quite. It was like standing at the edge of a cliff and knowing you were about to see something that would change everything. "We do have recordings," she said, "but they are not of combat academies. Humans do not have combat academies for our young children." A murmur went through the conclave. The Tovani delegates exchanged confused glances. No combat training? How did human young learn to fight? How did they learn to be strong? "I will show you a recording from what we call an elementary school," Dr. Vasquez continued. She was doing something with a small device, connecting it to the Great Hall's holographic systems. "The children in this recording are 6 to 7 years old in our counting. They are very young. What is the purpose of this? Elementary school?" Another Torveni delegate asked. "Do you teach weapon skills? Survival techniques? Pain resistance?" Dr. Vasquez looked at him with those warm brown eyes. "We teach them to read," she said. "We teach them numbers. We teach them to share and to be kind. We teach them that they are loved." The Tovani did not understand these words. Love was not a concept they used. Kindness was weakness. Sharing was for those too weak to take what they wanted. General Vortek, the most decorated warrior in Tovani history, made a sound of disbelief. His entire body was covered in battle scars, and he had never retreated from any fight in 300 years of service. "This will be amusing," he said to the Tovani beside him. "Let us see what the soft humans consider education. Perhaps we will laugh." Dr. Vasquez heard him. She did not seem angry. If anything, her smile grew a little sad. "Perhaps you will," she said softly. "But I do not think so." She pressed a button, and the recording began to play. The hologram filled the center of the Great Hall. It was so clear and real that some delegates felt they could step into it and walk among the humans they saw. The room in the recording was small and bright. Sunlight came through large windows and made everything glow with warmth. The walls were covered with colorful papers that showed letters, numbers, and drawings made by small hands. There were tiny chairs arranged in groups around tiny tables. Everything was built for people who were very, very small, and the people in the room were indeed very small. Kethris felt his body go stiff with shock. The human young were so little. They barely reached his knee height. Their bodies were soft and round, with no hard edges anywhere. Their skin was thin and delicate. Their eyes were huge in their small faces, and those eyes were bright with something Kethris could not name. A Tarvani child of this age would already have a shell. A Torvani child would already know how to use its claws. A Torvani child would already have fought its siblings for food and survived. These human children looked like they had never fought anything in their lives. "They are defenseless," a Kethmari delegate whispered. "Completely defenseless. How do any of them survive to adulthood?" Dr. Vasquez said nothing. She simply watched the recording with a gentle expression on her face. In the hologram, an adult human female stood at the front of the room. She was young, with dark hair tied back and a smile that seemed permanently fixed to her face. She wore simple, colorful clothing. There was no armor. There were no weapons visible anywhere in the room. "Good morning, everyone," the female said, and her voice was warm like sunlight. "Are we ready for a wonderful day?" The children responded with a chaos of voices, all talking at once, some shouting, some laughing. The noise should have been annoying. Instead, it sounded strangely pleasant. "What is her role?" General Vortek demanded. "Is she a guard? A trainer?" "She is their teacher," Dr. Vasquez replied. "Her name is Miss Sarah. She has been teaching first grade for 12 years. First grade? The first year of formal education. These children are learning the basics of reading, writing, and mathematics." Vortek made a dismissive sound. "Basic training, then. Let us see what discipline she uses." In the recording, Miss Sarah clapped her hands in a rhythm, and the children clapped back the same rhythm. The room became quiet. This seemed to be how she got their attention. "Before we start our lessons," she said, "I need to know how everyone is feeling today. Let's do our feelings check. Thumbs up if you're feeling happy. Thumbs in the middle if you're feeling okay. Thumbs down if you're feeling sad." The children held up their thumbs. Most showed thumbs up. A few showed thumbs in the middle. One small boy, sitting at the back, showed his thumb pointing down. Miss Sarah noticed immediately. She walked to him, moving between the tiny desks with careful steps. She knelt down so that her eyes were at the same level as his. She did not tower over him. She made herself small to meet him where he was. "Marcus," she said softly, "I see you're feeling sad today. That's okay. It's always okay to feel sad. Would you like to talk about it? Or would you like me to check on you later?" The boy's lower lip trembled. "Later," he whispered. "Okay, sweetheart. I'm here whenever you're ready." She touched his shoulder gently, then returned to the front of the room. Cathras did not understand what he had just seen. Among the Tovani, a child who showed sadness would be punished. Weakness was not tolerated. It was beaten out of the young until they learned to hide all soft emotions. But this teacher had not punished the boy. She had acknowledged his feelings. She had told him it was okay to feel sad. She had promised to be there for him. The recording continued. The children were learning to read. Miss Sarah held up cards with words on them, and the children tried to read the words aloud. Some succeeded. Some failed. A small girl with red hair tried to read the word on the card. Ka. Cat? Yes. Excellent work, Emma. That's exactly right. Miss Sarah's face lit up with pride, as if the girl had done something amazing. The girl beamed and sat up straighter, her whole body glowing with happiness. Another child, a boy with brown skin and nervous eyes, tried to read his card. Bah. He stopped. He could not figure out the word. His face crumpled with shame. Vortek nodded. Now she will punish him for failure. This is where the discipline begins. But Miss Sarah did not punish him. She knelt beside him, just as she had knelt beside the sad boy earlier. That's a tricky one, isn't it, David? Let's work on it together. What sound does this letter make? She pointed to each letter, one at a time. She was patient. She did not rush. She did not show any frustration. When the boy finally, hesitantly, said, "Bird," she acted as if he had discovered the secret of the universe. "You did it! I knew you could. That was wonderful, David." The boy's shame disappeared. He smiled so wide that it seemed to take over his whole face. "This is madness," a Kethmari delegate said. "She rewards failure with kindness? She treats success and struggle the same way? How do the children learn to be better if they are not punished for being weak?" Dr. Vasquez turned to look at him. They learn because they are not afraid to try. They learn because failure is not the end of the world. They learn because they know someone believes in them. even when they don't believe in themselves. The recording showed the children going outside to what the humans called recess. This was apparently a time for play. The children ran and screamed and chased each other on a field of grass. They climbed on structures made of metal and plastic. They threw balls. They fell down and got back up. One boy fell hard and scraped his knee on the ground. Blood appeared on his skin. He began to cry, loud and without shame. Miss Sarah was there in moments. She knelt before him, looked at his wound, and spoke in a soft, calm voice. "Oh, that looks like it hurts. You were being so brave, running so fast. Let's get you cleaned up, okay?" She took him inside and cleaned his wound with gentle hands. She put a small bandage on it, a bandage decorated with pictures of small animals. Then she did something that made General Vortex stop breathing. She kissed her own finger and pressed it to the bandage. "There," she said. "A magic kiss to help it heal faster. Better?" The boy nodded, his tears already drying. "You're so brave," she told him. "Would you like to be my special helper for the rest of the day?" The boy's face transformed. A moment ago, he had been crying in pain. Now he was glowing with pride, chosen for a special honor. He nodded eagerly, and General Vortex, who had killed thousands and never shown weakness, felt something strange happening behind his compound eyes. A pressure was building there. His vision was becoming blurry. He did not understand what was happening to him, but he could not look away from the recording. The recording showed the afternoon passing in the human classroom. The children learned about numbers. They counted objects, added small amounts, and celebrated each correct answer with the same joy they had shown for reading. Miss Sarah never grew tired of praising them. Her enthusiasm seemed endless, like a spring that could never run dry. But what struck the conclave most was not the learning. It was the small moments between lessons. When a boy dropped his pencil, the girl next to him picked it up and handed it back with a smile. When a child struggled to tie her shoes, Miss Sarah did not tie them for her but knelt beside her and guided her hands, teaching her slowly and patiently until she could do it herself. When two children argued over a toy during free play, Miss Sarah did not punish either one. She sat with them and helped them talk through their feelings. She taught them to use words like, "I feel sad when you take my toy. I'm sorry. I didn't know that would hurt you." By the end, the two children were playing together, their conflict forgotten. "This is impossible," a delegate from the Vornali said. The Vornali were a species of tall, thin beings who communicated through song. They had always believed themselves to be the most emotionally advanced species in the galaxy. Now they were not so sure. These children are so young, yet they show more emotional intelligence than our adults. How is this possible? Dr. Vasquez smiled. They show it because they are taught it. From the moment they are born, human children are surrounded by love. They are held and kissed and told that they matter. Their feelings are acknowledged. Their struggles are supported. They learn empathy because they receive empathy. The recording shifted to what Miss Sarah called story time. The children gathered on the carpet again, and she held up a picture book. She began to read, her voice changing for each character, making the children laugh and gasp and lean forward with excitement. The story was simple. It was about a small animal who felt different from everyone else and eventually found friends who loved it for being different. But the way Miss Sarah read it, it became something more. It became a lesson about belonging and acceptance, delivered so gently that the children absorbed it without even knowing they were learning. At one point, she stopped reading and asked the children a question. "Have any of you ever felt different? Like you didn't fit in?" Hands went up. Miss Sarah called on a small girl with glasses. "Sometimes kids laugh at my glasses," the girl said. "They say I look funny." "That must hurt," Miss Sarah said. "How does it make you feel?" "How does it make you feel?" "Sad And mad too. Those are very normal feelings. Can anyone in the class tell Lily something kind about her glasses? A boy raised his hand. I think your glasses are cool. They make you look smart. Another child spoke up. My dad has glasses too. He says they help him see the beauty in the world better. Lily smiled. She adjusted her glasses with obvious pride. See? Miss Sarah said, sometimes the things that make us different are the things that make us special. Your glasses help you see, Lily. That's wonderful, not funny. Kethris watched this exchange with growing confusion. Among the Tavani, differences were weaknesses to be exploited. A soldier with poor eyesight would be mocked and eventually driven out of the military. There was no room for those who were not perfect, but these humans were teaching their young something completely different. They were teaching them to see differences as strengths. They were teaching them to defend those who were mocked instead of joining the mockery. The recording moved forward to the end of the school day. The light coming through the windows had changed, becoming golden and warm. The children were putting away their things, getting ready to leave Dod, and then came the moment that broke something inside every warrior in the great hall. Parents began to arrive at the classroom door. As each parent appeared, their child would run to them with obvious joy. The parents would kneel down, arms open, and catch their children in embraces. They would kiss their heads and ask about their day. The love between parent and child was so obvious, so unguarded, that it almost hurt to look at. But it was Miss Sarah who drew the conclave's attention. She stood at the door, and as each child left, she spoke to them. Not quick, empty words, but real words. Personal words. Great job on your reading today, Emma. You worked so hard on those difficult words. I'm proud of you. Emma beamed and hugged her teacher before running to her mother. David, you were so brave in math today. I know numbers are tricky, but you didn't give up. That takes real courage. David stood taller, his earlier shame completely forgotten. Lily, your drawing during art time was beautiful. You have such a good eye for colors. Keep creating, okay? Lily nodded, her glasses shining in the afternoon light. One by one, the children left and each one received a personal message from their teacher. She remembered every struggle, every triumph, every small moment from the day. She had been watching them all, seeing them all, caring about them all. Finally, only one child remained. A quiet boy named James, who had barely spoken all day. He was small even for a human child, and his eyes were often fixed on the ground. Throughout the recording, he had faded into the background, overlooked and silent. But Miss Sarah had not overlooked him. She knelt down before him, putting her eyes at his level, just as she had done with every other child who needed her attention. She waited until he looked up at her. James, she said softly, I want you to know something. I see you. Every day, I see you. And I'm so glad you're in my class. The boy's eyes widened. His mouth opened slightly. It was clear that he had not expected this. He was the quiet one, the invisible one. He had probably thought that no one noticed him at all. You matter, James, Miss Sarah continued. You might be quiet, but that doesn't mean you're not important. Some of the most important people in the world are quiet. They watch and listen and understand things that other people miss. You're like that. You notice things. And that's a gift. James's father appeared at the door. But before running to him, James did something unexpected. He threw his arms around Miss Sarah and hugged her with all the strength in his small body. Thank you, he whispered. Then he was gone, running to his father. And the classroom was empty. The recording ended. Silence filled the great hall of Velith Prime. It was not a comfortable silence. It was the silence of beings who had just witnessed something they could not explain and did not know how to process. General Vortek was the first to speak. His voice was rough, broken by emotions he had never been allowed to feel. She saw him, he said. That boy, the quiet one. He was invisible. I know, because I was like him when I was young. Quiet. Overlooked. I learned to become loud with violence because no one saw me when I was silent. He turned to face the assembled conclave, his compound eyes still wet with tears. No one ever said those words to me. No one ever told me that I mattered. No one ever told me that being quiet was a gift. His claws clenched and unclenched. I killed 1,000 enemies trying to prove that I mattered. I conquered worlds trying to be seen. And this human, this soft, small, unarmored female, she gives that gift freely. To every child. Every day. He looked at Dr. Vasquez with something that might have been wonder or might have been despair. What have we done to our young? He whispered. What have we been doing for 10,000 years? Dr. Vasquez did not answer. She did not need to. The answer was written in the tears streaming down the face of the most feared warrior in the galaxy. The recording continued, and the great hall of Velith Prime had become completely silent. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the singing crystals in the walls seemed to have grown quiet, as if they too were watching the small humans in the hologram. The children were now sitting in a circle on a soft carpet. Their legs were crossed, and their small hands rested on their knees. Miss Sarah sat with them, not above them, not in front of them, but among them. She was just another member of the circle. This is our sharing time, she explained to the children. Remember, when someone is sharing, we listen with our whole hearts. We don't interrupt. We don't laugh. We just listen and care. The children nodded solemnly. They understood this ritual. They had done it many times before. A small girl with blonde hair went first. She talked about her new baby, brother, and how he cried all night, and how she was tired but also happy because she loved him very much. Miss Sarah thanked her for sharing. A boy talked about his dog learning a new trick. Another girl talked about her grandmother visiting from far away. Each story was small and simple, but Miss Sarah treated each one as if it was the most important thing she had ever heard. Then it was Marcus's turn. The sad boy from earlier. He'd been quiet all through the sharing time, his eyes looking at the floor. Marcus, Miss Sarah said gently, you don't have to share if you don't want to. But if you do want to, we're all here to listen. The boy was quiet for a long moment. The other children waited. They did not fidget. They did not complain. Somehow, these very young humans understood that this moment was important. My grandpa died, Marcus finally said. His voice was very small. It barely filled the circle, let alone the great hall where the conclave watched Dot in the hologram. The other children became very still. Some of them looked sad. A girl sitting next to Marcus reached out and took his hand. He did not pull away. Miss Sarah moved closer to Marcus, still staying within the circle. She did not pick him up or hold him, but she put her hand on his back, a gentle pressure that said she was there. I'm so sorry, Marcus, she said. Losing someone we love is one of the hardest things in the world. It hurts so much. The boy nodded. Tears were falling from his eyes now, leaving wet trails down his round cheeks. Would you like to tell us about your grandpa? Miss Sarah asked. Sometimes it helps to remember the good things. Marcus sniffled. He wiped his nose with his sleeve. Then, slowly, he began to talk. Grandpa took me fishing, he said. He had a little boat, and we went on the lake. He let me hold the fishing pole all by myself. That sounds wonderful, Miss Sarah said. And he told me stories at bedtime. Really good ones about dragons and knights and stuff. He did funny voices. A tiny smile appeared on Marcus's face, even through the tears. He called me Little Bear. Because when I was a baby, I had a bear costume for Halloween, and he said I was the cutest bear ever. Little Bear, Miss Sarah repeated softly. What a special nickname. He said he'd always be my grandpa, even when I was old and had grandchildren of my own. He said grandpas last forever. Marcus's voice broke. But he didn't last forever. He got sick and then he could not finish. He began to cry in earnest, his small body shaking with sobs. In the great hall, General Vortex stood frozen. Something was happening to him that he did not understand. His chest felt tight. His eyes were burning. A liquid was gathering behind them, pressing to escape. He had watched soldiers die. He had lost friends in battle. He had never cried. Torvani did not cry. They were taught from hatching that tears were weakness. That grief was a poison that must be cut out and thrown away. But watching this small human child weep for his grandfather, Vortek felt something cracking inside him. Some wall that he had built long ago, when he was young. When he had been taught that feeling was failing. In the recording, Miss Sarah did something extraordinary. She looked at the other children and gave them a small nod. And those children, those tiny defenseless humans, they moved. They gathered around Marcus. They put their small hands on his shoulders, his back, his arms. They formed a circle of protection around his grief. One girl gave him a piece of paper with a drawing on it. "I made this for you," she said. "It's a picture of you and your grandpa fishing. See? That's the boat." The drawing was crude, the way all young children's drawings were crude. But Marcus looked at it like it was the most precious treasure in the universe. "Thank you," he whispered. "Miss Ra." Sarah spoke again, her voice steady and warm. "Marcus, I want you to know something. Your grandpa loved you so much. And that love, it doesn't go away when someone dies. It stays right here." She touched her chest over her heart. "All those fishing trips, all those stories, all those times he called you Little Bear, that's inside you now. Your grandpa helped make you who you are. And that means a piece of him will live forever, as long as you remember him." Marcus looked up at her with red eyes. "Really? Really? Love is the only thing that's stronger than death. And your grandpa loved you with his whole heart. That love will stay with you forever, Marcus. I promise." The boy nodded. He was still sad. Anyone could see that. But something had changed in his face. The despair had become something softer, something that could be carried instead of something that crushed. "Can I keep the picture?" he asked the girl who had drawn it. "It's yours," she said. "I made it for you. Thank you." He held it carefully, like it was made of glass. Ms. Sarah looked around the circle. "Does anyone else want to share something with Marcus? A happy memory, or just something kind?" One by one, the children spoke. They told Marcus that they were sorry his grandpa died. They told him that he was nice and they liked having him in class. One boy said that Marcus was the best at building with blocks, and that was important. A girl said she would share her cookies with him at lunch. Small offerings. Tiny kindnesses. Each one a gift freely given. Kethris, ambassador of the Tovani, found that he could not speak. There was something blocking his throat. His compound eyes were leaking liquid, something that had never happened before. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice rough. "What is happening to me?" Dr. Vasquez looked at him with those warm brown eyes. There was no judgment in them, only understanding. "Those are tears, Ambassador. You are crying. Tovani do not cry. We have no tears." "You did not have tears," she corrected gently, "because you were taught not to have them. But they were always there, waiting, just as they are inside everyone who has ever loved and lost." Kethris turned back to the recording. The children were now doing something called art time. They were making pictures with colors and paper. Marcus was still sad, but he was making a picture too. A picture of a man in a boat, fishing. "I do not understand," Kethris said, and his voice was barely a whisper. "This child has experienced loss. true loss. And your response is, this? Kindness? Stories? Drawings? Yes, Dr. Vasquez said. But how does this make him strong? How does this prepare him for more loss? The universe is cruel. It will hurt him again and again. Should he not learn to armor his heart? Dr. Vasquez was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was very gentle. Ambassador, I want to ask you something. When you were young, when you lost someone for the first time, what happened? Kethris flinched. He remembered. He tried not to, but he remembered. I was corrected, he said. I was taught that grief was weakness. I was taught to cut it away. And did it work? Did the grief go away? Kethris did not answer. He did not need to. The tears still falling from his compound eyes were answer enough. We teach our children something different, Dr. Vasquez said. We teach them that grief is not weakness. Grief is love with nowhere to go. And we teach them that they don't have to carry it alone. We teach them that when they are sad, there will always be someone to hold their hand, even if it's a 6-year-old girl with a crayon drawing. In the recording, Marcus smiled for the first time since sharing time began. It was a small smile, still touched with sadness, but it was real. And General Vortek, the most feared warrior in the Tervani Empire, wept openly for the first time in 300 years. The days that followed the recording changed everything. The conclave of mentors did not continue with its normal schedule. How could it? Every delegate was still processing what they had seen. The Tervani, in particular, seemed unable to move on. They requested copies of the recording. Then they requested more recordings. Then they requested thousands more. Dr. Vasquez gave them everything they asked for. They watched human parents reading bedtime stories to their children, doing voices for dragons and princesses, making their young ones laugh before sleep. They watched parents checking for monsters under beds and in closets, not because monsters were real, but because making children feel safe was more important than logic. They watched parents carry sleeping children from cars into houses, gentle and careful, as if they were carrying the most precious cargo in the universe. They watched teachers stay late after school to help struggling students, receiving no extra payment, no recognition, simply because a child needed help and they could provide it. They watched coaches comfort losing teams, telling them that effort mattered more than victory, that trying and failing was better than never trying at all. They watched school counselors sit with troubled teenagers, listening for hours, just listening, because sometimes being heard was enough. They watched humans comfort each other through grief and celebrate each other's joy. They watched strangers help strangers for no reason except that help was needed. They watched a species that had every reason to be hard choose, again and again, to be soft with their young. Ambassador Kethris stopped attending conclave sessions. He spent all his time watching the recordings, taking notes, trying to understand. His staff reported that he had stopped eating, stopped sleeping. He was obsessed. Finally, after 7 days, he requested a private meeting with Dr. Vasquez. They met in a small garden on Velos Prime, surrounded by alien flowers that glowed with their own light. Kethris looked different than he had when the recording first played. His shell seemed duller. His movements were slower. But his eyes, his compound eyes with their 1,000 lenses, were clearer than they had ever been. I have been alive for 200 years, he said. I have conquered worlds. I have killed enemies beyond counting. I was considered wise among my people. He paused, looking at the glowing flowers. I was not wise. I was broken. My whole species is broken. We have been broken for 10,000 years, and we did not know it because we had never seen anything else. Dr. Vasquez listened without interrupting. I remembered something, Kethris continued. Something from when I was very young, before the training, before the hardening. I had a mother. All Torvani have mothers. And I remembered. She held me, once, before I was taken to the academies. She held me and made a sound that I did not understand. I think she was crying. His claws clicked together softly. I never saw her again. Children are taken from parents early among my people. It is considered weakness to form bonds with offspring. But she cried when they took me. I remember that now. I did not remember it before because I had built walls in my mind to forget all soft things. He looked at Dr. Vasquez with his 1,000 eyes. Your children are not hardened. They are not armored. They are not taught to forget love. And yet they grow into beings who cross the stars, who solve impossible problems, who fight with courage and think with creativity. How? Dr. Vasquez thought about her answer for a long moment before speaking. Because they know they are loved, she said. Because they know they matter. When a human child is taught that they are worthy of kindness, that their feelings are important, that they are seen and valued, something happens inside them. They develop confidence that cannot be beaten into someone. They develop resilience that cannot be taught through pain. They develop the ability to love others because they know what love feels like. She picked one of the glowing flowers and held it gently. Your warriors fight to prove they matter. Our people fight to protect what they love. Your soldiers fear failure because failure means punishment and shame. Our people are not afraid to fail because they know that failure is not the end, that someone will help them get back up. She smiled softly. Your empire was built on fear. Ours was built on hope. And hope, ambassador, is stronger than fear. It always has been. Cathars was silent for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was different. It was softer, more uncertain, more real. Can we change? After 10,000 years of hardness, can we learn to be soft? Yes, Dr. Vasquez said without hesitation. It will be hard. It will take generations. Many will resist because the old ways feel safe, even when they are harmful. But yes, you can change. Every species can change. Every person can change. That is the beautiful thing about being alive. 2 months later, General Vortex stood before the Torvani High Council. The greatest military leaders in the Empire sat in their battle chairs, waiting to hear what the legendary warrior had to say. They expected a report on military strategy or a proposal for new conquests. Instead, Vortex showed them the recording of Miss Sarah's first-grade class. He showed them Marcus crying about his grandfather and the other children gathering around him. He showed them James being told that he mattered. He showed them 1,000 small moments of kindness and patience and love. And when the recording ended, he spoke the words that would change Tovani civilization forever. We thought humans conquered the stars because they were fierce, he said. We were wrong. They conquered the stars because they were loved. Every human child is taught that they matter. Every human child is taught that they are seen. Every human child is taught that kindness is strength and that they are worthy of gentleness. He placed his clawed hand over his chest, over the place where his heart beats strong and steady. They do not harden their young to prepare them for a cruel universe. They soften their young. They fill them with love. And then those children grow up and refuse to let the universe be cruel. They change it. They make it kinder. They spread the love that was given to them to everyone they meet. He looked at each member of the High Council in turn. I have killed thousands. I have conquered worlds. I have never known defeat in battle. And I tell you now that the Tovani have been fighting the wrong war. We have been trying to make the universe fear us when we should have been trying to make it love us. We have been hardening our children when we should have been holding them. The High Council was silent. Some looked angry. Some looked confused. But some, the oldest ones, The ones who still remembered their mothers holding them before the academies took them away. Those ones had tears in their eyes. The vote was not unanimous. Change never is. But enough of the council supported Vortex's proposal that the reform began. It took 100 years. There were setbacks and failures, and those who clung to the old ways. But slowly, generation by generation, the Tovani changed. They learned to hold their children. They learned to tell them that they mattered. They learned that grief was love with nowhere to go, and that feeling deeply was not weakness, but the greatest strength of all. Centuries later, historians would study humanity's rise to prominence among the galactic powers. They would point to many factors: adaptability, creativity, stubbornness, intelligence. But the Tovani knew the truth. They had always known, ever since that day in the Great Hall, when a simple recording made the fiercest warriors in the galaxy cry. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been a weapon at all. It was a teacher, kneeling down to meet a child's eyes and saying the words that every living being needed to hear. I see you. You matter. I am glad you are here. And that, the Tovani learned, was more powerful than any army, any fleet, any empire built on fear. Love was the only thing that could truly conquer the stars, and the humans had known it all along.